Okay.
Should be 3.
So for my science literature paper research, I was curious about athletics and yoga. And so specifically, so obviously yoga helps heal injuries and can act as physical therapy, but what about like the mental side of yoga? And so my sport that I do is a painful sport. And so when I looked up yoga, I first was looking up its relation to pain. And I found that yoga actually helps increase people's pain tolerance. And that's in part because yogis or practice yogis have been found to have increased gray matter in the brain. And that their white matter which acts as like the connectivity between gray matter, is more like durable or like better adapted. And so the article that I found is entitled Insular Cortex Mediates Increased Pain Tolerance in Yoga Practitioners. It was done equally by 2 women, Chantal Villemure and Marta Seco. It was published in the Cerebral Cortex Journal. It had 34 citations on Scopus, and it was published in 2014. And basically what they were looking for was their thermal, or how people are sensitive to thermal detection, either hot or cold, and then determining their pain threshold, and then also examining what mental strategies yogis possess that might be different from their controlled group. And they also had an MRI scan to detect gray matter. So the practitioners group had a variety of yoga styles. They didn't want one select, say, vinyasa group and then see how vinyasa affects the brain. They wanted to get more of a general sense. So there was 14 subjects total per group, or control and practitioners. And the majority of practitioners also were more oriented toward the philosophy side of yoga, and practiced more mindfulness. And it was, and many of them expected that yoga practice would decrease their reactivity to pain in everyday life. They also didn't have any substances in their systems at the time of the testing, like alcohol, drugs, anything like that. So the actual design of the test, first was the thermal detection, where they had the monitor, as you can see on the left, of this 3 by 3 centimeter patch, which had a steady change of temperature of 0.5 degrees Celsius. The baseline temperature was 32 degrees Celsius, and basically they had to click a mouse pad every time they felt the temperature increase. And then you had the pain threshold, where the temperature would steadily ascend at 1 degree Celsius, and it would descend at 8 degrees Celsius for the other test. They did it on their non-dominant arm, but practiced on their dominant arm. And additionally, they also marked to see what type of ways the people used coping mechanisms to deal with the pain. And so the results show that yogis have more than twice the pain tolerance than the control group, as shown by figure A. And figure B shows the tolerance times for both individuals, from both groups. I wasn't a big fan of that diagram, but it was hard. I couldn't edit it out. And then figure C shows that yogis notice warm or cold sensations more than the controlled. And so the diagrams show that, so the heat was, there was less of a difference between the heat, or noticing the heat versus the cold, but there was still like a difference between yogis and the controlled group. And so why these results? So there's a correlation between increased connectivity in the left insular cortex and pain tolerance. And so that basically means yogis have an increased, yogis, or practice yogis have a more refined and developed gray matter connections in their brain, as shown by the MRI scan. And they also have better coping mechanisms than the control group, which is the bottom graph. And it shows that, so the white bars are the controlled group, black bars are yogis, and just the difference in accepting, relaxing, observing. That's not to say people in the control group didn't do that, but it was just exponentially higher, and therefore they were able to tolerate pain better. And so the conclusion is that yogis have a better pain tolerance than the control group. Yoga practitioners have more gray matter in multiple cortical regions, but only insular gray matter is correlated with pain tolerance. And gray matter volume of left insular cortex is positively correlated with the duration of yoga practice, and yoga practitioners have greater left intrainsular white matter connectivity. And so you can see the correlation between yoga practice with the years and the gray matter development. So therefore, what I've learned from this is that by doing yoga and practicing yoga will help raise pain tolerance and therefore also help with sports. Thank you. Yes.
Well, maybe you should go last.
In your experience, have you found that doing yoga has impacted your pain tolerance?
I think there are definitely moments where, when I'm erging and I'm just okay, you're just going to breathe and sit in this pain and accept it. And then it's oh, okay, now I can, where you're just okay, a sort of same tactic where it's you're hurting when you're holding a pose or something like that. And you're I'm just going to hold it for a couple more seconds, a couple more breaths. That same sort of mental practice was very beneficial in erging and rowing.
Okay, thank you. Who's next?